with the idea that God provides just enough, you know. And I have learned differently. Being in the Catholic family of 7 children and pretty much a probably lower middle class income, I learned to scrimp. And so now I know that I have to scrimp. Now I know the fullness and the goodness and the richness and the magnificence of spirit. And it's so wonderful to be so assured of that one, and to know it's operating in every single aspect of my life. So the topic today, well, the theme this month is about harvest 4. And a couple of weeks ago I talked about you decide. You decide what you want in your life. You decide what you want your harvest to be. And I realized after I spoke, I got home and I realized I didn't say half of what I wanted to say. A lot of other things came up though. But anyway, so I'm trusting that some of that will come through today. So today the topic is, it's a harvest of the heart. It's a harvest of the heart. Howard Thurman has an essay called Harvest of the Heart. And there's a quote from Proverbs that says, keep your heart with all vigilance, for out of it come the issues of life. Keep your heart with all vigilance, for out of it come the issues of life. And then I looked up other translations of that, and one of them said, guard your heart above all else, for it determines the course of your life. I like that one. I'm going with that one. Guard your heart above all else, for it determines the course of your life. So when we're talking about heart, what are we talking about? Obviously, it's not just the physical heart. We're talking about the spiritual heart. And in many mystical traditions and spiritual traditions, the heart is the center of our being. The heart is that divine center within us. And that the heart can contain what we might call good and bad. We don't like to call it good and bad here, but you know, that's the way the world looks at it lots of times. It contains life-affirming ideas and attitudes and thoughts, and it contains non-life-affirming ideas, beliefs, attitudes, and thoughts. So keep your heart with all vigilance. Guard the heart. Watch what comes in. Watch what you buy into. You know, we were talking in practitioner class the other night about this field of collective consciousness in which we all live. Here on this earth plane, in this world, there's a collective consciousness, a group thought, so to speak. And wherever you go, there's a little bit different variation. There's something different. Like our collective consciousness here at Agape Bay Area would be different from the collective consciousness at another spiritual center. Not good or bad, or better or worse, just different. You know, if you go to different cities, haven't you noticed that the consciousness in different cities feels differently? Even in this Bay Area, you can feel the difference in the consciousness. Different groups of people, different communities. Every community has an energetic field. What the founder of Science of Mind, Ernest Holmes, called a mental atmosphere. That there's a mental atmosphere everywhere. Here in Kahila, there's a mental atmosphere. There's a collective energetic vibe that when we were looking for a place to be, jived with our mental energetic vibe. And so we said yes to it, you know. So today we want to look at that heart, my heart, you know, what's in my heart? Now, in Science of Mind, the heart can also be equated with the subconscious mind. And so what we know about the subconscious mind is that basically it determines our reality, bottom line. So what's in your heart determines your life, basically. And how come, why is that true? Because what's in your heart brings forth the substance of the divine. What's in your heart brings forth the issues of life. What's in your heart is acted upon by the law of life. There's a universal law that acts upon everything we think and feel and know, deep within us. And let me be clear, it operates more on feelings than thoughts. You know, a new thought years ago, it used to be change your thinking, change your life. Well, that's true. And now it's, however, because your thinking oftentimes determines your feelings, although we could say it the other way around too, but I won't go into that your feelings can determine your thinking as well. But, you know, change your thinking, change your life. It's not just change your thinking. What I need to do is change those patterns. I need to notice what's in my heart. I need to notice how am I responding to my neighbor in a loving way, in an unloving way, in an apathetic way? How am I responding to challenges in the world right now? Am I removed, not caring? Am I responding with compassion? Am I active in my profession of what I believe to be true, of values of justice and compassion and love and peace? Am I acting in accord with that? All my actions, my words, my thoughts let me know what's in my heart, right? It lets me know where my consciousness is. Heart's another word for consciousness, basically. It lets me know where my consciousness is. So I want to watch that. I want to notice that. I want to be aware of what's going on. And it's hard to imagine, because I know all of you are very enlightened. I know that all of you are here because you are awake and aware, and because you're seeking to deepen in your consciousness. I know that, and I know there are so many people in the world who aren't interested in that. I know there are so many people in the world who kind of walk around unconscious, and that's not a judgment. Reverend Michael calls it sleepwalking, sleepwalking through life. It's not a judgment, it's simply an acknowledgement, and I probably was sleepwalking at one point too, we all have been. We're all at different stages of life. However, what we want to do here is be awake, be aware, be lucid dreamers, so to speak, Watch our life unfold in a beautiful and magnificent way. So what's in my heart, what I really believe and know deep within me, what I feel deep within me, is going to be acted upon. It's going to show forth, it's going to be reflected in my life. Guard my heart above all else, for it determines the course of your life. So I look at, where's my life now? I look at, am I living my highest possibility? Because we're here at Agape Bay Area to live that high possibility, both as individuals and as a collective. So what's my highest possibility? Am I living in my genius zone? Practitioners now are reading the 15 Commitments of Conscious Leadership, and we're talking about that every week. And this week I was reading yesterday is about your commitment to being the genius. Am I committed to being my own genius? And each of us has a genius zone. Each of us is here with gifts, talents, abilities that we're here to live. And so am I living that to the fullest? Because yes, I'm a spiritual being. Yes, I do my spiritual practice. Yes, I'm grounded in spirit. And there's always more, right? Consciousness is always evolving. Even after I made my transition to the next dimension of life, when I was a kid, we were taught that you go to heaven or hell. That's kind of limited thinking. And fortunately, I don't believe it anymore. Because the reality is we create our heaven or our hell here on earth. So where do I want my consciousness to be at the end of my life? And as I move into the next dimension, what's the consciousness I want to carry with me? Do I want it to be a loving consciousness? Can I look back on my life and say, wow, I really developed the quality of love? And actually, when I say I mean the spirit within me, the divine self. Has that divine self really honed the quality of love? Has that divine self really become more aware of the oneness that she is, So at the end of my life, I'm carrying that consciousness into the next dimension. And what I'm trusting and knowing is that as we make that transition, there's also a real moment of grace where that consciousness gets stepped up. That's my belief. Doesn't have to be anybody else's, So how do we create within our heart those conditions that bring forth a magnificent, fulfilled, and fulfilling life? How do I do that? And one answer is, I don't. One answer is, I don't. I can invite certain conditions. I can invite a mental atmosphere. I can invite an inner environment. And I can do my spiritual practice, meditation, prayer, journaling, visioning, all of those spiritual practices. Tithing, being of service, those are all spiritual practices. I can do all of that you know. And where was I going with this? I do not even remember where I was going with this. You figure out the and. So, yeah. So how do I know? How am I going to do it? I don't. I can do the spiritual practices. I can create conditions in my life. And then, here's the kicker, that the spirit within accomplishes it. My ego self thinks it can. In fact, my ego self, yesterday it came to me that my ego self is a control freak. My ego self wants to control my life, really, you know, and it wants to even control my spirituality. It wants to make myself more spiritual and get into spiritual pride and all that stuff. So we got to watch for that kind of thing. But the reality is, I'm very clear that any consciousness that has been developed in me to this point has not been the doing of my finite self. It's been the doing of the infinite self within me. I create the conditions. As I've often said many, many times, you know, if I could be fully enlightened now, I would be. If I could be, because that's a deep desire of my heart, to know oneness as much as I can possibly know it, to live from that place, to be loved, to be, and totally self-realized, totally self-fulfilled with a capital S. If I could be there now, if I could have done it myself, I would have, right? And I know that that is probably true for all of you as well. And so what I have to do is do those inner practices and then surrender to the spirit in me, which the ego really doesn't like surrender. And by the way, I don't mean to put down the ego, because the ego is also very helpful to us in this life. It helps us to be grounded on earth. It really assists us. So I'm not putting down the ego. However, in terms of my spiritual growth, it's not too effective. Let's just put it that way. And so I'm looking at, how do I do this? I don't. I create conditions in my life so that what happens is I don't only change my thinking, but I change the way I think. You see the difference? I don't just look at the content of my life and pay attention to that. I live from a different context. And that's basically what I want to kind of look at today, you know. I'm living from a different context. In other words, I'm seeing, of course, all the content of my life. I'm seeing, you know, my checkbook, I'm seeing my relationships, I'm seeing my family, I'm seeing my livelihood, I'm seeing the way the world is operating. I see all of that. Those are the conditions. That's the content. However, it's the way I'm seeing it. Where am I looking from? Do you hear what I'm saying? And I am guaranteeing you, when you continually, consistently do your spiritual practices, you'll be looking from a different place. And when you're looking from a different place, you see things so differently. So differently. It doesn't mean you don't see the content, because you do. You know, you still see war, you still see racism, you still see homophobia, you still see conflicts of all kinds, you still see greed and consumerism, you still see all of that. However, when you're living from a different context, from a different way of thinking, then what happens is you see it from the context of oneness and wholeness. So instead of ain't it awful, what you start to see is, wow, how wonderful is this? You know, how wonderful is this? How wonderful is this? That Donald Trump was president and brought up all of this stuff for us to see and heal. Do you hear what I'm saying? Yeah. And you don't have to, see, at first when we're doing that inner growth, we consciously have to change our thinking about it, right? We have to I have to consciously look at it and say, okay, I'm supposed to see this in a different way. I'm supposed to see wholeness here. And we program ourselves, we do affirmations, we do all that good stuff, you know. And at a certain point, after we practiced it, you start noticing that instead of trying to make yourself see things a different way, you automatically see them a different way. And I'm speaking this from experience, you know, that I don't just look at A lot of you know abundance has been a big issue in my life for many years, although now I consider that healed. But, instead of looking at, okay, this is what my checkbook says, and it's not looking very good right now, or this is what my investments are looking like, what if the stock market crashes. I had a client once down in LA, and he was wealthy. And he came to me, and he was the most poor person I had ever met, practically. You know why? Because he would see all of those investments, all of that money, and he was continually afraid of losing it. That's poverty, and I'm not judging him at all. It's just, so we worked with that, because that, and in a sense, I didn't have all the investments and money he had. However, I was richer because I knew my source. And I knew that my source is always present within me. And I knew that it always supplied. So I can look at my account. And over the years, I've trained myself by changing my ideas about the content. I've trained myself to live from context. So what I had to start doing was what my practitioner told me. He would say, okay, when it's looking like there's lack in your life, just see this as a way of there's this great vacuum, and how is Spirit going to fill this? You see? You change the way you look. Instead of, how's this going to work? Wow, Spirit's going to fill this. How's that going to happen? Or a difficult, inharmonious relationship. How is Spirit going to bring us together? How is Spirit going to harmonize this? Instead of, wow, this is really bad, and this person's got to change. Not looking at the fact that we have to change, of course, but this is really bad. And so, no, this is an opportunity. See, when there are those times in our life that we feel that we're lacking for anything, whether it's money, whether it's love, whether it's support, whatever we think we're lacking, whether it's peace of mind, whatever, it's an opportunity for the universe to rush in and fill that vacuum. Because that's what the universe loves to do. It supports us. It loves us. We are its own. You are an individualized expression of the oneness. As I said at the beginning when we did the blessing, you are a once in eternity happening. You are here to thrive. Why would Spirit want to incarnate as you, which it has done? You are it. Sometimes that's a stretch to realize that. You are that one. Why would it abandon you? That's ridiculous. It would be abandoning itself, right? And so it's here to support us. So we start to change our context. And we can start by looking at the content and going, okay, the content of my life, the situations in my life, are simply ways that my soul has brought forth for me to grow, right? I was I always look for stories, examples, humor. I look at jokes, because how Reverend Verona always tells a joke. I thought I want to tell a joke, and I just looked at them and knew this isn't going to work. But I did find, that's just not my shtick. So I did, however, find this, I didn't know this about eagles. Maybe you know it, but I didn't know that an eagle can sense a storm coming way before the storm ever comes. Did you know that? No, I didn't know it. All right, and so what it does to prepare is it flies as high and perches itself on this high, not a nest, but a tree, branch or whatever. But it situates itself high. And then what it does, is it prepares its wings so that when the storm comes, when those winds come, what happens is that the eagle is lifted by the wind and begins to soar. So it's the very storm itself that lifts the eagle and allows it to soar. And you notice that the ego doesn't try to get rid of the storm, right? It's not trying to get rid of it or saying, oh, how awful this storm is. What the ego is saying is, this is great. This is a storm that's going to lift me higher. I get to soar. I get to soar higher. And that's how we can look at the storms in our lives, because here's the thing. When you're living from context, when you're living from the place of oneness and wholeness and love and peace, and you can live from those places, when you live from that place and you see things differently, it does not guarantee that your life is going to be all full of love and peace and joy. I'd like to say it is, but that's not the way it works, you know. In fact, as many of you know, when we set an intention to know more love, more peace, more joy, more abundance, whatever it is, when we set that intention, what happens? You all can tell me. Everything unlike it comes up to be healed. So sometimes people leave this teaching because they go, well, okay, I've been practicing this, and now my life's a mess. Well, of course it is, because you had a high intention, you know, and whatever's unlike that intention comes up, and that's your storm. That's what's going to lift you and take you higher and higher and higher. It takes courage, and it's worth it. I'm standing here because I've lived it, I guarantee you, and I still live it and guarantee you, you know. I remember sitting in my living room a few months ago thinking, oh, wow, this place supports me so well, I'm just comfortable, and I'm so glad that Spirit always supports me in this place. And then about a month or two later, a flood happens in my living room. And you know, I didn't know what the heck is happening, or why is this happening? Does not even become a question anymore. Yeah. It's like, okay. I mean, yes, it didn't feel good. Yes, I'm not saying I was happy about it. Yes, I was sad about it. Yes, I thought, wow, this is going to take a lot of time to get this all fixed. Yes, I'm trusting the insurance will pay for a lot of it. It was all of that, and it was more. It was, how is this going to take me to my next level of consciousness? I get to deepen here. I get to see divine order and divine activity, and know that that order and that activity is taking place in and as my life, in and as this situation. And it's powerful. I mean, I've come to a place where I so trust divine order that even when I see things that are disturbing, because you're still going to see things that are disturbing, you're still going to experience disturbing things in your life. However, you see it from a place of wholeness. There are times when I can just sense and feel, and in fact, it's a lot of times, sense and feel and know the wholeness of life. I can sense and feel and know how the universal law is putting different people together, different things together. You start to see from that vantage point. And then when you see from that vantage point, there's a sense of peace. There's a sense of, everything is in harmony. Everything is in order. And it takes some practice. It takes intention. First intention. And my intention since I can ever remember, has been, I simply want to know oneness. I simply want to know that Spirit is my life. I want to simply know that Spirit is the life of each and every person that I connect with. I want to know that we are one. I want to know that each one of you is a dimension of me and vice versa. I want to know that. That's been the biggest desire of my life. And then I watch how from that intention, everything I need to grow in that awareness comes. And a lot of it is from situations that might be called disturbing or challenging, you know. I've got to take a breath for a minute. Because I'm thinking my older daughter, the greatest teacher in my life when I was in practitioner training and after I became a practitioner, acted out so badly. I was a single mother. My ex-husband couldn't help with it, and I had to put her in foster care. That was hard. I still get a little teary when I think of it. That was not an easy decision, and it needed to be done. Now she's, 47? I think she's had her 47th birthday. And she was mad at me for years. Angry, mad, and now we're like best friends. See, you have to let go of your concept of time, too. You got to know that, everything happens in time and on time in the most divine and perfect way. I'm not in charge of the timing. And I see how everything was necessary in that relationship. Everything has been necessary as our country and our world unfolds and evolves. We start seeing it from that perspective. And there's such a sense of peace. There's such a sense of order. And then when we pray from that place. We pray from the heart. We pray from the place of, I know all is well. And it's not what we call spiritual bypass. It's not that we don't look at things. Rather, we look at things square in the eye. We look at the situation. We look at the challenges in the world. And in the midst of that, we're seeing a higher truth. Now, at first, we do it from a content place. We do it from a place of programming ourselves. And I guarantee you, after programming yourself, at a certain point, Spirit just rushes in, and all of a sudden you're seeing from a different perspective, and it's natural. You don't have to think about it anymore. That's what we're about here, is to know that so deeply, to live from that place. So it's not thinking about, it's a different way of thinking. It's not programming something for. We're coming from a place in consciousness, coming from wholeness, coming from oneness, coming from love. And then we watch as Spirit orders and harmonizes our lives in a beautiful, beautiful way. I love my life. I love everything I'm doing. And part of me, my little ego self says, well, you could be making a lot more money doing something else. Or blah, 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 blah. And does that serve my spirit? What's in my heart? What's in my heart? What do I want to do? And I want you all to be empowered to look at your heart. Practice witness consciousness. Notice what's in there. Notice what you want to shift. What you want to shift, you bring a different quality to. If I'm looking at lack, I'm bringing the quality of abundance and maybe security. If I'm looking at a sense of revenge in myself, I'm looking at a quality, I want to bring forth a quality of love and forgiveness. Do you see? You look at whatever it is that seems to be the quality that is, I call it less than life affirming. And you go to the polar opposite. What's the opposite? What's my soul really wanting? My soul doesn't want a bigger bank account. My soul wants expression. My soul wants to know spirit. My soul wants me to be supported so that I can do the work I am here to do. And I'm here to tell you that you are supported to do what you're here to do. And let yourself stretch with that. What's your creative genius? What's your genius zone? What are you here for? What are the gifts and talents that you've been gifted with that you're here to express? And how can you stretch in them? That's what I'm doing now. I'm consciously looking, how can I stretch in this? How can I be used even more fully and completely by the divine? That's what we're here for. That's what Agape is for. How can we stretch as a community? We got lots of opportunities to stretch and grow. How can you as a member of the community stretch and grow and support and be of service? All of that. Is there anything else? There's a lot more. And I know that I am complete for this moment.